Welcome everyone this morning. On what's today? Wednesday morning, September 15th. Jan Akins. Good to see you this morning. September is always a great month because my birthday's in September. September 15th is always kind of hard because that's when quarterly taxes are due. So, paying the tax man today. Sally Crocker, good morning to you. Daryl and Suzanne, welcome this morning. Welcome everyone. Dana Kreshock, good morning to you. Wendy Chadwick and Jeremy, if you're both watching, welcome to you. Oh, Wendy, you're down in Shaver Lake. Yeah. Good to see you. So we'll see if Jeremy shows up then. Alyssa Tucker, good morning. Karen Lowe, welcome there with your cup of coffee. I've had my couple of cups already this morning. Grateful for that. We are in Proverbs 15 today. And it's interesting when the way that I work through Proverbs as like a personal devotion is because I can't remember how many verses are in chapter 15, but at this point in the book of Proverbs, we are into every verse is a new idea. Every verse is a standalone proverb, and maybe it spans for 2 verses, but they're very short. And so it doesn't build an argument over the course of the entire chapter or a chapter in the course of a series of chapters like many books of the Bible do. Proverbs are short, pithy statements of wisdom. And so how do you study that? There's so many ideas flying in this chapter. So what I do, if I'm using it as a personal devotion like I am right now, is I'll read the entire chapter and then I'll grab a hold of just one proverb, sometimes 2, but mainly just one proverb, and journal about it, meditate on it. How does this really help me to, how does this apply to my life? Because a proverb is a general truth that could be applied in many different ways. So how does this really affect me that's relevant today? Debbie King, welcome. So that's how I kind of journal about this kind of thing. So we are in Proverbs 15. We're going to look at verse 1 this morning. There's my mom. Good morning to you. I wonder if you should wait for a couple more names here, but I'm going to read Proverbs 15, verse 1. Carmen Lego, welcome. This is, and you'll recognize this, right? Because this is repeated, really. It says this: a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. A soft answer turns away wrath, or a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. So it's the same statement twice, but from different directions. So one is on the receiving end of harsh words, and the other is on the delivery of harsh words. Neither of them are going to do anything but escalate a situation. So what's the answer? What's the solution? Well, if we're on the receiving end of harsh words, we give back a gentle answer, and that's usually far more helpful than matching intensity with the person who's angry. They're full of passion and so on about a particular issue, and maybe an offense or something. Maybe they're just having a bad day and they're just short with you. Has nothing to do with you really, but the words seem harsh, and it could provoke a response. If our response is in kind, harsh, likely that's going to be inflammatory, not dissipating anger. In the same way, when we're feeling irritated, when we are feeling angry, when we feel our day's not going, all of a sudden someone does something that we already feeling a little bit of a short fuse, and we deliver a harsh word, we could probably expect that that's not going to be helpful. The Proverbs talk about this continually, particularly the tongue and our words, how powerful our words are. In this case, we're talking about someone who's angry or being harsh, or they have wrath, or passion is another word I like to use about a particular issue. And how do we talk through these things? Well, now I am someone who is my personality, my temperament is one who is conflict avoidant, and so I know some of you who listen are similar. We've had conversations and so on. And so there was a sense in many years of my life where I was less self-aware that my conflict avoidance could be a bad thing. I think it's a beautiful, good thing. We need people who are peacemakers in the world, and I'm certainly one of those. But there can be a time where that desire to make peace is actually not the healthiest response, right? So how do we stay engaged with someone who is clearly kind of stirred up, or we ourselves are stirred up, and we want to make the best use of our words and communicate what we really think without stirring up anger and so on. That's what the heart. And James repeats this. If you read the book of James, James really is into this idea of understanding the power of words, and he hits it several different times in his book, but in his letter. But James chapter 1, I wrote this in my journal this morning. You'll remember he says this in James chapter 1, verses 19 and 20. He says, "Let every person be quick to hear, or quick to listen, but slow to speak, slow to anger, for the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God." So James is clearly has the same sentiment as Proverbs 15:1. A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. We got to slow down, be quicker to listen, slow to become angry. And I would say this about anger: being angry is not really the point here. We can't control our that we get angry. Okay, the control part is how we react while we're angry. That's what we're responsible for. I'm not responsible for getting angry. That's just an automatic response in me that tells me something's wrong. Whether it's a perceived danger or an actual danger, something's happening, and anger is responsible, or perceived, rather, not a danger, perceived injustice. Either I have a desire, I'm not getting my desire, I don't think that's fair, and I get angry. Whether that's a real, legitimate injustice or a perceived one, that's kind of the root of anger. And anger as a secondary emotion happens all the time too. We'll talk about that in a second, I think, a little bit. So anger in itself, there's nothing wrong with anger. It's how we respond in our anger, how we react, how do we use our words, and we allow anger. So that's really the kind of anger that is being talked about in James, being slow to anger. So we suppress emotions that might be disproportionate or might be unhealthy to express in an unhealthy way, right? But the feelings themselves are just feelings. They're okay. There's nothing immoral about them. So what I was thinking about this morning is, how we can tend to be easily offended. We are defensive in situations where someone's coming at us with a sharp tongue, and the wisdom of the proverb writer is that here's a tactic to employ. Use a soft answer, a gentle answer, because that will ultimately gain you a more desirable outcome in that conversation. A harsh return, answering in kind, is only going to inflame the situation. So if wisdom's going to prevail in those kind of passionate situations, we have to keep a check on our words, and it's better to use a gentle or soft response in those circumstances. It's just going to have a better outcome. So how do I do this? So like I said, I'm conflict avoidant, and I'm also easily overstimulated when someone is using passionate language. So, and it's usually, and it's happened to me so many times, and I just know my response. It provokes my limbic system. So limbic system is that part of your brain that puts your body into one of three modes when it senses danger. When there's some danger happening or something, your brain just automatically tells you to fight, flight, or freeze. One of those three things happen, and it's one of those things we share with, all animals, mammals, I guess. I don't know what class of animals we share, but, it's how our brains are wired, that when we sense danger, we either fight, we flee, we withdraw, or we freeze. We're kind of bound up. My brain doesn't think right and everything because my limbic system is shutting down all those systems to deliver all the energy to my adrenaline, my heart rate goes up, my eyes dilate. You're very sensitized to things, so it puts your body in a prime. It primes your body to survive. Really, is the bottom line. Survive by fighting back, survive by getting out of the situation, or freezing is a very common response. And we see this in the animal kingdom all the time. It's easier to see an animal that's moving. I'm a hunter, so I'm often unaware of an animal's presence until they move. They move, they make a sound, they move, their movement catches my eye. And so that's another just a survival response that our limbic system has. Fight, flight, freeze. And so that's our response oftentimes. So when someone comes at us with a harsh word and so on, part of our limbic response is to fight. And we want to return the same kind of words in kind, and we have to suppress that and engage our prefrontal cortex, right? Our thinking part of our brain, our creative part of our brain, the part of the brain that's going to come up with good solutions. Is there a conflict? Let's work toward a solution. That's the prefrontal cortex, and we need to be able to engage that. So how do I do that? Because for me, I'll just tell you what it feels like. If someone is just even a little passionate about what they're saying, I get bells and whistles going off in my limbic system. I am easily stimulated by that, and I have to really work hard to engage my prefrontal cortex, right? To use not common phrases, but phrases that I've learned to say to myself to soothe the limbic system, so I don't fight back and say the harsh words back, or I don't withdraw and just run away from the situation, and it'll never get resolved, or I'll tend to freeze where I can't think straight. I'm not coming up with creative solutions, and when I can't do that, I feel a little trapped, and then that trapped feeling causes a fight response, and that's just how I just know me. I know how my brain works. And so I need to tell my brain from my prefrontal cortex, tell the limbic system, hey, it's okay. There's no real danger. This danger is a perceived danger that your limbic system just is reacting to this person's intense tone. And the intense tone is not, let me give you an example of what I mean by I'm easily stimulated by it. So Martha, who has a personality, when she is passionate about something, she'll raise the tone of her voice and she leans in toward you, and she wants to communicate very directly what she's feeling. And her goal in that is, I want to be heard, and I want you to understand, and I want to resolve. I can't stand her temperament is I can't stand unresolved conflict, and so I'm going to use all of my my language and my tones and everything to try to bring about this resolution. So she's leaning in, she's speaking with passion, and her desire is to resolve. Well, to the person who is highly stimulated by that kind of thing, that to me is like, whoa, we need to bring it down. Why are you yelling at me? I've said this before. I say it jokingly because this is like foreign language to Martha. It's like, what do you mean? I'm not yelling. you know, like, oh really? But in reality, yeah, I'm a high reactive temperament, so that feels like yelling to me, even though it's really not. We both want the same thing. We both want resolution. We want creative ways of bringing about that resolution. And so for me, knowing myself, I have to speak calming words to my limbic system so that I can really hear what Martha is saying, or anyone who I'm perceiving is coming at me with maybe a harsh tone. And often, it's not just a perceived harsh tone. Oftentimes, we all experience where people really are ticked off and they are saying things in a very harsh way, right? So, what's the solution to have a gentle answer? I self-soothe by giving myself pointers from my prefrontal cortex so that I can hang in there and actually resolve this. So here, let me give you a few examples of this just for practicality. What do I tell myself in that situation? First of all, I say, ask questions. Don't just assume you know what they mean by what they say. Oftentimes, particularly when we're passionate, we use language and we're using tones that are trying to communicate a certain thing. And if that feels off, I'm going to interpret it. Maybe I'm going to misinterpret maybe what you're saying. Maybe I don't like the words you're using, so I'm going to become defensive. And so I really need to slow down and ask good questions. You used this word. What did you mean by that? Can you clarify for me this statement you made? Because it sounds to me a little harsh. What do you mean? I'm trying to understand. And so it helps to clarify, first of all, so we don't jump to conclusions and become defensive and offended unnecessarily. And a way of just kind of slowing things down for me is to just ask good questions. And what that really does, why that gentle response turns away wrath, is one of the things we really want when we're being kind of passionate about something and we want to talk through something and we're using harsh language sometimes because we're really feeling a lot of emotion about it. Down deep, we just want to be heard. We want to be understood. We want to have what we're saying be validated by someone trying to understand us. And so when someone asks good questions, that feels good. It's like, oh, you're hearing me. You're really actually trying to understand me. And all of a sudden, maybe the technique or strategy of using passionate language it'll kind of pull back a little bit because, oh, I see that I don't have to convince you. You're actually drawing information from me. You're asking good questions. So that caliber of gentle answer really does turn away wrath. It really brings down the level of things. Here's another thing that I tell myself in those situations. Listen to the heart, not just the words. I see that commonly, especially when people are using language that is manipulative, or they're using like accusative language, or talking about your character in a way that you feel is unjustified, and you really do want to defend yourself. So I tell myself, Mark, just what is it? What's at the heart of this? Don't just get hung up on how they're saying it to you, and the words they're using that feel inflammatory. Try to get to the heart of that. See through it, so that you're really trying to understand them. And again, it comes back to questions. Your goal is to understand, to communicate to them. I want to understand you. I want to hear you, listen to you, really what you're saying. And I'm going to let go of some of the inflammatory language you're using, so as to really get to the bottom of this. So we kind of put it aside and not be provoked by it. So I try to set aside language that feels inflammatory to me and get to the heart. What are they really communicating? I want to know that. A third thing, I release pride. And I tell myself, Mark, keep your ego in check. You don't need to defend yourself. I feel like sometimes if you admit you're wrong about something, the other person wins, and that doesn't feel good. You feel weak, and so on. And so, in relation to that, I have a strong feeling that that admitting, just the fact of admitting your responsibility for an offense, if that's what's being talked about, is actually a show of strength. And so I have to make sure I keep my ego in check and say, Mark, it's actually, like, this is my self-talk, right? So I use my own name. Mark, it's okay to admit or take responsibility for something that you did that may have been hard for that other person, because that's actually a show of strength. Your ability to take responsibility for your part and not blame something else, and actually this is your problem because of how you're perceiving things, and you took my words wrong, and we want to defend ourselves, but it's okay, and it's actually a show of strength when we can say, hey, I hear what you're saying. I could have used better words there. I could have said something a little bit different. I could see how that language I used or that tone I used could have been interpreted by you in that way, and I could have chose different words there. It's hard to admit that, especially when someone is using language that you want to be defensive about. You don't want to admit your own responsibility because you feel like they're not taking in responsibility for their part. But we're not responsible for other people. We have no control over other people, but we do have control over us, and it's a show of strength to take responsibility for our part. That's another version of a gentle answer. And when we take responsibility, I have commonly experienced that the other person becomes open. That gentle way of responding and taking a humble stance actually opens the door for the other person to take responsibility for their part. And they end up apologizing too, oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, like, yeah, I'm sorry, I kind of overreacted there, and will you forgive me? I love those kinds of exchanges, but they often begin with a gentle answer, a gentle response to those harsh words. So just to review, I ask questions. I don't assume I just know what you mean by what you say. That helps people to feel heard. Listen, that brings down the tone. I listen to the heart, not just the words. I give grace to the words that are being used. I understand there's a bunch of passion going on. You're going to choose words that maybe you would regret later. I'm choosing not to react to those, but I'm trying to get to the heart of it. Again, communicating, I want to understand, and admitting and taking responsibility for your part. That's a gentle answer. I'm not taking responsibility for your part. I'm taking responsibility for my part. That's the only thing I really have control over. And the last thing that I do that if I'm really feeling like this person is not coming down, they're really pressing their point, they really need an answer from me, and I'm feeling triggered by my limbic system, which causes the freeze response in some cases. I'm not thinking straight. I have to understand, Mark, you're not trapped here. You don't have to give an answer right now. It's actually a very reasonable thing to say, you know what, I need to think about that. I hear what you're saying. You've clarified what they're saying. I need to take a moment, okay? Would you give me that? Let me think about what you're saying. I need to do some thought and also maybe do some research on that, and let me get back to you on that. And then you can get yourself out of the situation. You can let your own emotions kind of come down, and you're much more engaged in using all of your faculties. And then you can really think apart from your own defensive response and offended response, and you can think about your own, be self-aware and things like that. And all of a sudden you have a better response. What's important though is that you do circle back around and give them an answer. You come back around and you re-engage, and the sooner the better. But so for me, I'm a conflict avoidant person. That's something I have to worry about. I have to work on all the time. Is make sure you're re-engaging, and even though you know it's going to be a hard thing to talk about, it's just so helpful. So that's the thought for today. A gentle answer turns away wrath. A harsh word stirs up anger. So good, such great skills from the book of Proverbs. God wants us to live a skillful and wise life. May we do it in increasing measure each day. So we'll see you again tomorrow morning.